Who's going to break out for Syracuse football this upcoming season?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are going over some breakout candidates for Syracuse football this upcoming season. We're going to go over 3 offensive candidates, 3 defensive candidates, and 3 other names to keep in mind. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sport stops sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Let's begin this podcast by talking about the 3 players on offense that I think have a chance to break out for Syracuse football. And leading us off, Savion Washington, 6'8", 340-pound tackle, a 3-star transfer from Colorado. Now, why do I think he can break out for Syracuse football? After all, this is a veteran in college football, and he was only really a 3-star transfer. Well, you can already see the fact that he was a 3-star transfer, the potential is there, right? He's not highly regarded right now across the country, but sneakily, he's a pretty good tackle. Last year, he had a Pro Football Focus grade of 65.4, which is pretty good. And he did it at Colorado, which plays in at the time was a Power 5 conference, but is now Power 4 conference. But you get the idea. He's played against solid competition, and he fared pretty well last year at Colorado. Now he's likely to start for Syracuse this upcoming season, and given his size and the fact that he was actually pretty good last year, I think there's a chance he can break out and be one of the better tackles in the ACC for next season. It's why I listed him on yesterday's podcast as a potential all-ACC player, a long shot to make an all-conference team. But nevertheless, he's definitely someone that can break out for Syracuse this upcoming year. Next up, another player who I thought was a long shot to be all ACC. That is wide receiver Zeed Haynes. He is 6'1", 170 pounds. He is a 3-star transfer from Georgia, and the sky is the limit for this kid. He's a former 4-star prospect who last year with the Bulldogs, he redshirted, only had 1 catch. I believe it only went for 20 yards. That was his whole stat line. So the potential for Zeed Haynes is certainly there, given his pedigree as a high school recruit, the fact that he was actually one of the better 3-star transfers in the country. And at the spring game, he looked really good. He looked like the wide receiver 1 for Syracuse at the spring game. Now, I know Jackson Meeks wasn't healthy and Oronde Gadsden wasn't playing, but could Zeed Haynes be a breakout candidate? I think so, because Oronde Gadsden's not a breakout candidate. We know he's really good. And Jackson Meeks, well, he's a veteran player who's been in college for a long time. Why not go with the younger kid in Zeed Haynes as a potential breakout? And in that spring game, he had 6 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. His speed is his best attribute, and I'm really looking forward to watching it for next season. And for what it's worth, he is tied for 17th in the ACC to lead the conference in receiving yards for this upcoming season. I believe it's 40-1 on BetOnline. That's where I found it. I saw it yesterday. Zeed Haynes tied for 17th. So there's potential for him to break out in a big way for this team for this upcoming season. Once again, he could easily be the wide receiver number 1, not including Oronde Gadsden. And number 3, we're going to go with a true freshman. There might be a few true freshmen that I mentioned on this list. Yassine Willis, the running back. 6'1", 225 pounds from New Jersey, a 3-star recruit who was originally committed to Pitt, but then flipped in favor of Syracuse. And he also had a terrific spring game, 11 carries for over 90 yards and a touchdown. I've said this before when previewing the running backs for this team. What stands out about Yassine Willis is the size. He doesn't just have college football size, he has NFL size. 6'1", 225 pounds, which is nearly a BMI of 30, which would be really good just for the NFL, let alone college, where you can be smaller and still be highly, highly effective because, well, college and pros, there's a huge difference. Yassine Willis, I think, is going to see the field a good bit in his true freshman season. Now, he's kind of more of a long shot breakout candidate for this upcoming year because LaQuint Allen is the established starter on the team, and I don't wish anything upon LaQuint Allen. I hope he stays healthy for the whole year. And if he is healthy for the whole year, then it's going to impact Yassine Willis's ability to get the touches necessary to break out. But it's certainly a name to keep in mind because he has the size, and I can easily see him having a good bit of rushing touchdowns because he could easily be a goal line back. Day one, he can at minimum be a goal line back for this team, but you never know. He is definitely a breakout candidate right away for this offense, and we've seen true freshmen break out recently at the running back position at Syracuse. Sean Tucker, ring a bell in 2020? He wasn't the starter right away, but gradually his role increased to where by the end of the season, he was the starter. And he essentially broke out in his true freshman season and then had another huge jump in his true sophomore season. So that could be a similar thing with Yassine Willis, maybe, although LaQuint Allen is the established starter there right now. But I really like this kid, Yassine Willis, mainly his size and his ability to be a goal line back, at least for the moment. So the 3 players on offense who I think could really break out for this team for this upcoming season: the offensive tackle, Savion Washington from Colorado, who had a pretty good year last year, but maybe he takes an even bigger jump this upcoming season. Zeed Haynes, the wide receiver from Georgia, who was once a 4-star prospect, redshirted last year, comes over to Syracuse. He might just be the wide receiver 1 for this team. And then we just talked about him, Yassine Willis. Now, I know that LaQuint Allen is the unquestioned starter on the team, but 6'1", 225 pounds. He certainly has the size to play in college football right away, so I would not be shocked if he has a big year, and we just hope that LaQuint Allen stays healthy, right? But if he doesn't, then maybe Yassine Willis can have a huge year for this team. So those are the offensive breakouts for Syracuse football this upcoming season. Leave a comment below. Who else do you think could break out on the offensive end for Syracuse football this upcoming year? Now, coming up, we're going to talk about the players who could break out on defense. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And if you're itching for football season just like I am, I believe we're now 16 days away. Well, guess what? FanDuel has released the Orange's odds for the first game against Ohio. Syracuse is a 17.5-point favorite to get the W. You think Syracuse is going to cover? Well, you can bet it right now on FanDuel if you prefer to play it safer, perhaps. Syracuse's money line is minus 950. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football, expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Now, let's continue with the players who are most likely to break out on defense. We've already gone over the players on offense. We already went over that. Now let's do defense. And I'm going to start off with a name who is, all right, maybe I'm kind of cheating. He's not really a breakout in my eyes or maybe to your eyes, but for the country, he could be a breakout player. That is Fadil Diggs. He is 6'5", 260 pounds, a defensive end, 4-star transfer from Texas A&M, one of the 60 best transfers in the country in 2024. So again, how could Fadil Diggs be a breakout candidate? Hasn't he already broken out? Isn't he already a really good player? Well, he's never made an all-conference team. He didn't make it in the SEC, and he was a really good player in the SEC. He was really good at Texas A&M. Did not make all-conference there. No matter where you go, it seems like every single list, including a video game, underrates him. So I'm going to consider him a breakout candidate because while I think he's a really good player, and I don't really think if he has a big year, it's that he broke out, in the eyes of the public, in the eyes of the country, besides maybe us in our Syracuse bubble, he's a breakout player potentially for this team. His career high is 4.5 sacks in a season. I think he can easily double that. I think he easily could. 8 sacks, maybe, for Fadil Diggs. Then you would really consider him a breakout player. But regardless, he's already really good. Already a candidate to be an all-conference player this upcoming year. But in the eyes of the country, he's really underrated. So, yeah, I'm going to cheat and say that he is a breakout candidate on defense because a lot of people will consider him a breakout if he has a big year, especially if he can raise that sack total to 7, 8, 9, dare I say even 10 sacks. So Fadil Diggs is my first breakout candidate. And for my second breakout candidate on defense, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to cheat again because I couldn't figure out one name to mention. So I'm going to give you 3 at a time here. Okay, one of these 3 names, Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff, Dennis Jaquez, and Kevin Jobity. One of those 3 on the defensive line. I don't know which one. It's really difficult to predict it because we got to know who's going to actually play. Dion Wilson from New Mexico State, I believe, he's going to likely start. So you're looking at 2 of those 3 are going to, in all likelihood, start for this team next year. Which one of them is actually going to break out? The trio combined has 6 career starts at Syracuse. So while they are experienced, they've been with the program for a good bit. They haven't really started while with the Orange. And someone on that defensive line has got to break out along with Fadil Diggs. Fadil Diggs is really good. I think Dion Wilson's pretty good. Someone else has got to step up on that D-line. So I'm going to say that for a breakout candidate, it's one of those 3 defensive linemen. Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff, Dennis Jaquez, or Kevin Jobity, and leave a comment below which one do you think is the most likely of those 3 players that I just mentioned. And so in case you're kind of not clear with what I'm doing here, I'm considering those 3 as one of them will be the second breakout on defense. So now let's go to the final breakout candidate I have on the defensive side of the ball for this team. Jayden Bellamy. He's kind of flying under the radar. He's 5'11", 175 pounds. He is a corner, a redshirt sophomore. Last season, he played in 12 games and started more than half of them. All right, so he has He has started before. Starting experience is what I was meaning to say there. He has recorded 29 tackles last year and a pick. That, I believe, was a pick 6 against Pitt last year. What leads me to believe that he could have a big year for Syracuse next year, there's always a reason why I'm picking these players. His Pro Football Focus grade was a 72.4, which is pretty solid. So I'm not saying he's going to be all ACC. But for Jayden Bellamy, if he's a starting corner for this team next season, another year older, he could break out. Could he be an all ACC? I'm not entirely sure, but it's possible that he breaks out because he was pretty good in limited action last year. So how does he translate that to a bigger workload? It's like in basketball, a player plays well for 20 minutes a night. How is that player going to do if you give him 30 minutes a night? That's kind of how I look at it with Jayden Bellamy. Last year, he made 7 starts in 12 games. How is he going to do if he starts all 12 of them? Because he was pretty good last year in a more limited workload. So can he translate that to a bigger workload? If he does, then he's a prime breakout candidate. Then he's, in all likelihood, going to be considered a breakout just because, well, he translated it into a bigger workload and is pretty good. So I like Jayden Bellamy as a possible breakout for this upcoming season. Once again, the 3 breakout candidates I have on the defensive side of the ball. Fadil Diggs. Yes, I know I'm cheating on Fadil Diggs because he is a really good player in his own right already, but in the eyes of the country, maybe not so much. One of Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff, Dennis Jaquez, or Kevin Jobody. Someone has got to step up on that defensive line. And one of those 3 hopefully will break out. And then in the secondary, I got Jayden Bellamy, the corner, a redshirt sophomore who was good in a limited sample last year. Can he translate that to a bigger workload for this upcoming season? If he does, then he's a breakout. Essentially breaks out if he does that. So those are the most likely players I have on defense to break out. Once again, leave a comment in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to break out for Syracuse football on the defensive end of the ball? Are there any names that I'm leaving out? Am I nuts for thinking that, Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff, Dennis Jaquez, Kevin Jobody, or Jayden Bellamy? Am I cheating too much on Fadil Diggs? Well, you can let me know in the comments section below on the defensive breakouts. Now, coming up, we're going to talk about some more names to keep in mind. It's one thing to watch baseball on TV. That at times can get pretty boring, but going to a game in person is an awesome experience, and I'm looking forward to watching the Mets for the rest of the summer. And the way I'll be able to watch them in person is by using Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. All you have to do is go to Gametime and search the team you want to see of your choosing. It can be MLB or any league for that matter, and ticket options will appear right away for you. My favorite part is the all-in pricing feature. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. There are 3 more names that I would like to mention as possible breakout candidates for Syracuse football this upcoming season. We've already gone over the 3 players I think could break out on offense, the 3 players I think could break out on defense, but these are 3 more names that I just want to throw at you as well. Maybe not the most likely on either side of the ball, but they deserve a shout out. They deserve some consideration here. I want to start off with Trevor Pena, 6-foot wide receiver entering his 5th year at Syracuse. And last year he was injured for most of the season. He only played in 1 game, and that was the Army one. In his career at Syracuse, he's only got 25 total catches, and one receiving touchdown, which came against Clemson in the fourth quarter in 2021. If you recall, Syracuse lost 17-14. I think he was the one who scored the second touchdown for Syracuse, but that was a close back and forth affair. Pena had a long touchdown, but the Orange could not upset Clemson. So with Pena, he projects to be the main return man for this team for this upcoming season. That's what he is, mostly a specialist, a returner, and I think he's really solid in that role. But the reason why I mention him as keep your eye on him as a potential breakout candidate is because, well, he looked pretty good in the spring game. Off the top of my head, I believe he had over 100 yards in the spring game playing with the first team offense. And once again, there was no Jackson Meeks. There was no Oronde Gadsden, but there were some weapons that were playing. Like when Allen was playing at running back, you had Zeed Haynes who had a good day. Trevor Pena really stood out at that spring game. So I don't know, is he going to see the field enough at wide receiver to get the necessary touches to do this? He has 25 total catches. I'm thinking maybe he could have 25 alone this upcoming season. And if he does that, would you consider him a breakout? If he has 25 to 30 catches, is that a breakout for him? Because he only has 25 career total at Syracuse. I don't know if he's going to get the playing time, but if he does, then he's certainly a candidate to break out. That's why I didn't include him as one of the three most likely players on offense to break out, but someone who I wanted to shout out because he's very interesting. So that's Trevor Pena. The next one I'm going to mention is, actually the next two I'm going to mention are both on defense and both are true freshmen. And the disclaimer here is that it is so difficult to project true freshmen in college football. Almost impossible. Even the very best recruits don't necessarily see the field at all. They don't. Because it's football and you have to adjust to the size and the speed. It's a lot different than basketball where, Donnie Freeman is the number 6 overall player in the country. We expect that he's going to have a big freshman season at Syracuse, right? But in college football, not so much. You can be the number 1 player in the country and you might not see the field for your true freshman season. That's just how it works. But I wanted to give these true freshmen a shout out. Let's start off with Marcellus Barnes, 5'11", 165-pound corner from Tennessee. He was a 24/7 Sports composite 4-star recruit and a top 30 cornerback in the country. He was originally committed to Virginia Tech, but then he decommitted and chose Syracuse over schools like Georgia and Ole Miss. That's one of those recruits that Fran Brown got where you're like, wow, that's a big-time player, right? I would not be surprised if he sees the field as a potential starting cornerback for this upcoming season. I wouldn't be surprised, especially because they're playing a 4-2-5. Right? Syracuse is going to have a new defensive scheme. In the past, they've run a 3-3-5. They're going to have a 4-2-5. So still 5 defensive backs on the field. Is he one of the 5 best defensive backs on the team? Maybe. And if he is, Deuce Chestnut was a freshman and made all-freshman team. He was a third-team all-ACC player. Can Marcellus Barnes do that? Although I will have to check, but just from I don't think Deuce Chestnut was a true freshman. I think he was a redshirt freshman at the time. But still, I think Marcellus Barnes could potentially break out for this team, even as a true freshman. I think he could. Finally, King Joseph Edwards. And this is someone who I have seen his name brought up in the comment section a lot. So I'm going to shout him out. 6'4", 225-pound defensive lineman. A 2024 4-star recruit on ESPN and on 24/7 Sports. With this defensive line rotation open, aside from Fadil Diggs and maybe Dion Wilson as well, it's open. Anybody's guess who is going to play along that defensive line. So, King Joseph Edwards, can he have a big camp? Can he flash on the field potentially? Maybe. That's why I put him on the the names to keep in mind, but not one of the three most likely on defense to break out. He could. It's possible, but he's going to have to get the playing time as a true freshman, which, like I said, you never know really with true freshmen. Most of the time, they don't play in college football. Still, figured I'd shout out King Joseph Edwards and my thoughts on him. I think he could be a great player going forward, and who knows? Maybe he has a big year in his true freshman season. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football Podcast, from NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So that wraps up the 9+ players who I think could break out for Syracuse football next season. Once again, the 3 players on offense who I think could really break out for this team: offensive lineman Savion Washington, Zeed Haynes, the wide receiver from Georgia, and Yassine Willis, the true freshman running back, who I think is going to see the field on day 1. On defense, Fadil Diggs. I know I'm cheating on it, but still, he's underrated across the country. Then I said one of Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff, Dennis Jaquez, or Kevin Jobody. Hopefully one of those 3 can break out along the defensive line for Syracuse. And then the third one is Jayden Bellamy, the corner who was solid in a limited sample last year. Can he translate that to potentially a bigger workload? And then 3 players to keep in mind: Trevor Pena, Marcellus Barnes, and King Joseph Edwards. That is it for this episode about the 9+ players I have to break out for Syracuse football. Now, coming up tomorrow, we got Poll Friday, which we're going back to basketball for, which is with Chance Westry fully healthy. What do you think the ceiling is for Syracuse basketball next season? Because I think it's elevated. So I'm going to go over your guys' thoughts and my thoughts on how much Syracuse's ceiling has grown since the announcement that Chance Westry is fully healthy for this upcoming season. Thank you guys so much for watching this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And I'll see you all tomorrow for Poll Friday.